And lo and behold, overlooking the lake, one day, that's when the epiphany hit. It was, why don't you just, I wanted to make an obscene amount of money. I wanted to make billions of dollars. It was part of a motivation, not just for the sake of the money. It's the application of the funds and the freedom that it brings and all the wonderful, wonderful, amazing things that money can buy.
Warren Eugene is one of the cyberpreneurs who are opening up the thousands of new businesses in cyberspace.
This is my little money tree. I hope you're growing sprouts lots of money this week.
Mr. Eugene is convinced he's going to make millions, tons and tons of good old-fashioned cash. But cash is about to go through a whole new change of life on the internet.
In a network of computers, it's not the MIPS and chips and whatnot that's most important. It's what goes on between the people using them that makes them really powerful. A reminder from Sun Microsystems, proud to support this PBS program.
I'm Scott Simon. Money machines can provide cash almost anywhere in the world, from urban shopping centers to casinos. Now, sending money or spending it electronically certainly isn't new. But on the internet, the fear of thieves lurking in fiber optic shadows has made the whole idea of cyberspace commerce a tough sell. But that may be about to change, as banks do business with a new kind of digital dollar, and e-cash comes to life on the internet.
When you think about it, money is an adaptable little devil, and not just as the poker chip currency we use in casinos. There are credit cards, debit cards, banknotes, bonds, traveler's checks. Some of us even still use real dollars and cents. But when it comes to the internet, money has become a bit of a gamble. A gamble that now appears to be one major handicap to net commerce. For everybody wants to know how to send cash back and forth across the internet without risk to either buyer or seller. This is a particularly intriguing ingredient in Warren Eugene's corporate life. Mr. Eugene lives in the small town of Unionville, outside of Toronto, but he's recently established his internet business interests in the Caribbean.
In the Caribbean, it was open. It was an open-door policy, and it was much akin to being a pirate or a privateer. And I make light and make joke of it, being the pirate of the Caribbean, hence we're called such on the internet these days. But it was an opportune moment. The timing was right, and it was forensic. There was a frenzy. I don't even think there's such a word as forensic, but it was busy.
The forensic is all about gambling. For Warren Eugene has opened an internet casino, and he is betting that the net can provide a location for the biggest gambling operation the world has ever seen. He just might be right.
It's a global casino, and in essence, everybody is coming from all over the world, meaning from Japan and Taiwan and Hong Kong, the Orient. So all throughout the Far East, we seem to be building a crescendo, or it's building a group of individuals or loyal players who are coming to us. Now, as soon as internet becomes much more proliferative in those given countries, for instance, Japan is just beginning to put its infrastructure in for the internet. And Hong Kong, it was always under the conglomerates that were holding it. There were some problems here recently, but it's coming back to being more open door and more open door policy. Beijing, the internet's there now. And Australia, it's huge. It's become very popular.
If the gamblers of the world are going to play in cyberspace big time, they're going to have to find a system where they can exchange money the same way they do in real casinos. Except they're going to have to do it with some form of electronic cash. Digital money isn't new. The big world banks transfer trillions among themselves every day without ever actually touching a real dollar. But until now, that technology hasn't been available to the rest of us. Making it available has been the life's work of cryptographer and internet visionary David Chaum. Mr. Chaum lives and works in Amsterdam and in cyberspace and has been developing a system called eCash.
eCash is really very, very close to the cyberspace equivalent of an automatic teller machine. You go there, you withdraw cash, you use the cash for whatever you want, you may get some other cash, and occasionally you can also go there and deposit cash.
David Chaum is a bit of a legend in the wired community. He's been preaching his electronic cash concept for nearly 15 years and sees it as a whole new way of looking at money, a new digital currency. eCash is based on taking real money to buy digital cash, electronic tokens for shopping on the internet. While most financial systems already on the net rely on credit cards in some way or other, eCash is a revolutionary form of personal money. It would still be issued and guaranteed by the major banks. And like the real thing, once you'd spent it, there would be no trace of who it came from or what it was spent on. No paper or electronic trail. Not only has he developed a new currency, David Chaum has taken a stance against the ubiquitous information gatherers.
What you really have is this tremendous momentum towards very fine-grained data capture about individuals, not for any real malicious, sinister reason, but just sort of in the interest of efficiency and normal commercial interest. But you're creating something which poses an extreme, well, sometimes they say national vulnerability, but I think it's broader than that. It's something that it's like building some kind of very dangerous system that if someone could get in there and grab that data and misuse it, you would have a very different world than you have today. And just people just knowing that what they're doing is being watched and recorded in great detail has an enormously chilling effect on them.
If you think all this talk about data gathering and new currencies is just futuristic nonsense and will never happen, David Chaum just asked you to cast your mind back to the introduction of credit cards.
I mean, 25 years ago, credit cards were basically going through, I think, a 5 to 7 year period of just repeated trials and failures. And it was a nightmare, and the technical infrastructure was such that, banks had to send their receipts to the other banks in the system, and so it was unbelievably cumbersome, and some banks just refused to pay the other banks, and so forth. And there were tremendous problems with fraud, and there was a lot of concern about extending consumer credit, and organized crime was involved in a big way in stealing cards and this and that. I mean, it's an incredible history if you read about it. But after these 5 or 7 years, finally it kind of settled down, and by now people regard credit cards to be, as basic as anything else.
If credit cards are no longer a novelty, personal electronic commerce still is. Various governments have been eyeing the whole phenomenon with great caution, worried about both the speed and the anonymity of untraceable money. The big banks have also been slow to embrace eCash, but Mr. Chaum is convinced the technology has now been perfected, and the entire financial community will have to get its head out of the clouds and actually start treating his concept as a reality. If he's right, eCash is poised to have a huge effect on business on the internet, and that's welcome news. Not only in Amsterdam, but all over cyberspace, and particularly here in the wine country of the Napa Valley. The wine business is built on hope. Hope that the mixture of sun and rain and earth and grapes will somehow provide the magical combination that will let them make a great wine. And then they hope they can sell it. This is the last day of the harvest at the family-run Schaefer vineyard in the Napa Valley. They're picking the final grapes for this year's vintage. Like most small and medium-sized wineries in this valley, getting to this stage is only the start of the process. Now they have to make the wine, and then deal with the toughest part of all, getting it to the customer.
All right. Okay, Al, keep it going, babe.
For unless you live in a big city with a specialty wine store, it's sometimes difficult to get a bottle of the best Schaefer Cabernet. That is, until wine expert Peter Granoff started his virtual vineyard. Mr. Granoff has been selecting wines for various San Francisco restaurants for years. And what he's done here, quite simply, is open a wine store on the internet. He tours the Napa vineyards, chooses his favorite wines, and hopes to sell them from his website.
You get a great deal of in-depth information. The complete background on the winery, bios on the winemaker, if it happens to be of interest. You're not forced to go through that, but it's there if you want it. But more importantly, every every wine, in the case of the wineries, every wine is presented with a tasting chart, which I designed, which profiles the basic taste parameters or basic characteristics of that wine. And then it's supplemented with my tasting notes. The intent there is to put more information in the hands of the consumer than, for example, saying this wine got an 89 or a 92 or whatever.
A big part of Mr. Granoff's approach has been in making his website as simple as walking into a well-organized wine store, where everything is laid out, the inventory, the cost, and of course, his personal taste chart.
The same issues, a retailer worries about traffic through his store and positioning, shelf positioning and things like that. We're addressing the same issues here, but it's in the context of a website. The fundamental challenge, however, remains.
There are over 200 wineries like this one in the Napa Valley, each of them competing to turn out a better wine than their neighbor. The Schaefers feel that their hillside vineyard produces a harvest unlike any other. But no matter how good the wine, the harsh reality of the wine business is it's only as good as it sells. And that's part of the reason Doug Schaefer, winemaker and president of Schaefer Wines, has just signed up with the virtual vineyard.
I think it'll help sales. I think we'll sell some wine, but more importantly, we're going to get the word out. We're going to get the story of Schaefer Vineyards and the family business, the hillside vineyards, and the things we're doing here, the organic farming. That's most important.
For Peter Granoff, getting the Schaefers to sign on to his concept was a long process. Doug and his father, John, don't rush the wine in the Napa Valley, and they don't rush into a new business decision.
It was almost a year to the day that you called me. You realize that
We've been making them wait a year.
It was a year. I talked to you guys.
Conservative, Doug, but I didn't think we were that conservative.
I started reading about horror stories. People wouldn't get paid. They could tap into your own computer system at your office. Things which scared me, and I wasn't going to jump in. I wasn't going to be the guinea pig. And so we laid back a little bit, waited 6 or 8 months, and decided to hook up with Peter. After he had a little bit of a track record going, things seemed pretty settled, and the other wineries that were with him were happy. We decided to jump in, and so it's worked out okay.
It worked out okay because Peter Granoff's view of the internet and the web is not one of traditional marketing. He doesn't care about selling to the 40 million people who use the net. He cares about reaching the smaller group inside the net community who are interested in buying wine.
The internet and the World Wide Web specifically is able to deliver in-depth information, to combine entertainment with pure functionality, but deliver that in-depth information to a potentially widely dispersed audience. It's often referred to, I think erroneously, as a mass market vehicle. We believe it's the ultimate in niche marketing vehicles, because you can put information up on the internet and deliver it to a relatively small audience that's totally spread out, that would be very, very difficult to reach economically through conventional means, through print means, other avenues.
It all seems remarkably simple, but there's only one real snag. Same old problem: money. For no matter how much preparation Peter Granoff puts into his new company, he still feels powerless when it comes to dealing with potential customers who are simply not prepared to trust their credit cards to the system.
Are we losing business from consumers that we never even hear from, who maybe have visited the site, who spent a great deal of time on the site, but never got to the point of actually deciding to order a bottle of wine or one of our specialty food products because they were afraid to put their credit card across the net? And that's the intangible, and the question that we really don't know how to answer yet.
So all of a sudden, Peter Granoff's little wine shop is involved in the bigger picture of the future of money. It's a serious issue, serious enough that in Washington, a congressional subcommittee is actively looking into it.
And this is our second hearing on the future of money. This subcommittee bravely continues to go where no one has gone before.
Stanley Morris is considered by many to be America's top expert on financial crime. He believes that once major criminal elements discover the wonders of the net's financial technology, it will remove a lot of the difficulties they have in hiding and laundering illicit cash.
A large amount of currency is like an elephant. It's difficult to hide. It takes time to move. It attracts attention. And attention is the enemy of criminal activity.
Stanley Morris is head of the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. If you're involved in big-time money laundering, he's the last guy you want looking into your bank accounts. It's part of his job to keep legislators up to date on the race between financial technology and government regulation. But even Mr. Morris recognizes that technology already has a huge head start.
The financial services industry is international. Technology is moving with such extraordinary rapidity. For us to come along with a clunky old approach that says, we think we'll regulate this by requiring the certain kinds of reports and the certain kinds of records, and we go out for public comment. And it took us 5 years to get basic record-keeping regulations out on the wire systems. This is the FedWire and basically the interbank transfer systems. A couple of $1 trillion go through New York a day. Millions of transactions. So it's a very complicated matter, but probably not as complicated as potentially some of these other systems could be. And to come up and say, well, we're going to come up with a regulatory structure that we're going to put in place in 5 years is simply not going to work.
Well, right now, the internet is a lawless society. It's the Dodge City of the Wild Wild West, so to speak. And regulation isn't there, nor do we have to have regulation. This is a mechanism for freedom of speech, for democratic principles and freedoms and liberalism. This is a device that allows people to interact and communicate and learn. And if sometimes learning means putting your hand on a hot stove and getting burned, so be it. You can't protect people from everything. It's part of a learning process.
And we see on the internet now efforts at creating international gambling, for example. Those kinds of activities that are sort of outside of the normal regulated for consumer purposes, to protect the consumers, and regulated for governmental purposes to protect the public from organized criminal activity, those would become problems for us.
With virtual gambling already based outside of American legal jurisdiction, and yet just the click of a mouse away from anywhere in the States, police and prosecutors feel it could eventually become a storehouse for illicit money.
The business that we're in is, we're in the nervous business. We're always nervous, we're always concerned. There's always the potential. I think that, in this agency and in the Treasury Department, we're thinking about it. We, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, have responsibility for regulating casinos as non-bank financial institutions. I mean, they do basically take in cash, they wire money, they take issue credit, and that's so that in many ways they look and walk and talk like a bank. So we've begun to establish some base-level regulatory systems to ensure that money laundering and tax evasion don't go through our casinos. I don't, we're looking at these promised casino activities on the internet because those would or would not fall within or outside our regulatory scheme. They might or might not provide a basis for, illegal activity. But I think, quite honestly, it's probably too soon to tell.
While being a successful bookmaker in places like England can get you a lifetime seat in the House of Lords, in North America, it can get you a seat for a few years in the slammer. So until the gaming laws are clarified, Warren Eugene is being very choosy about who gets to bet in his casino.
No Americans and Canadians allowed. I've banned Canadians from the services for quite some time as well. I've never accepted money from Canadians and or Americans until I'm 100% extricated from Canada and decide not to enter the United States again. Or until eCash comes about, and as I said, that's how important it is, and how important it is for eCash to come about, because it layers us one step further from accepting direct fund payments or transfers from Americans and or Canadians.
Ah, yes, eCash. So in one of the great ironies of the internet, it is David Chaum's elegant concept for private digital money that's going to end up as the perfect system for internet gambling.
It's a way for us, I hate to say this, but to hide behind the coattails of somebody else who's going to take the brunt and the burden of the American Justice Department or the feds and the world governments who are not too keen on electronic cash transfers.
In the meantime, if Warren Eugene is nervous about taking our cash, he has no problem at all with European money and is particularly excited about taking Asian money.
It's the most important aspect of my business. and will continue to be. It's a huge marketplace, massive, 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 massive marketplace. They don't have the same puritanical hang-ups, of which I might add, Europe threw and cast out its Puritans, and it doesn't have those hang-ups that the Americans and some Canadians have about gambling. It's accepted in their society. It's incorporated in their society. It hasn't done them any harm.
And we add and place our bet for $5 and doom, 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 doom. You just won. Congratulations.
If you're thinking of perhaps taking a little gamble in the virtual casino, it's simple. All you have to do is start by giving Warren some money.
We ask for the monies to be ponied up or sent in advance. I'm not in the collection business. I can't legally collect from people offshore or onshore, any place, nor do we want to. So an individual will have to trust us and us them to send funds, and they are. They're sending, some of them a lot of funds, massive in some cases, some of them small amounts of funds, $5, $10. We'll accept any amount of funds as a goodwill gesture to establish and set up an account.
Now, if you're still worried about putting up your money, Warren will tell you that everything in his casino is audited and supervised by a major international accounting firm. And if you were actually to win something and are worried about getting paid, he has some comforting words for you. It doesn't make any sense, he claims, not to pay the winners.
This is a really good business, the best in the world. And with this much money at stake, we're going to do our utmost to protect our credibility and our integrity. And we won't create any problems for ourselves. It's too easy a pickings. The fruit is there on the vine, you might as well pick it, and it comes each season. It's ripe, it's wonderful, it's abundant. And why create a problem for yourself?
Warren's right. It makes sense in the new financial markets of the internet not to make any problems. But whether or not we as a society will have a problem adapting to the new currencies on the net is still well up in the air.
Obviously, there's a lot of very, very smart people there thinking about how the future of financial services and other kinds of activities might reap profits. On the other hand, I think it's as a cautionary note, at least in the United States, the only real experience I have in any depth, we're very conservative about our money. I mean, we've got warehouses full of Susan B. Anthony dollar coins because the American people wouldn't use a dollar coin, they wanted a dollar bill. And so we don't rush to judgment. We wrung our hands for years before coming up with a new currency on the $100 bill because it looks a little different. And the American people are not happy about changing their currency. So with the idea of suddenly they're abandoning their currency to run into some new, cyber currency of some sort, I think we will probably be, the United States anyway, will not be the leading edge here. I think other countries will probably be further along.
It's adventurous, it's exciting, it's like the days of the pirates and privateers. I've got, I'm working for King and Country, and I've got a little piece of paper that's giving me right to sail my ship around the Caribbean and do whatever I want, and now the internet is the place to do it, and I can do anything I wish within reason, so that freedom, that sense of freedom and adventure and exploration is wonderful. Those are upsides, but the downside is that I prefer that people don't gamble and take their money and give it to charity, or do something for themselves or enhance their life or lifestyle. On the other hand, who am I to suggest what people do with their funds?
Warren Eugene claims those funds from everywhere but the United States and Canada just keep pouring in, and the virtual casino is a moneymaker. He hopes to make even more with eCash. Peter Granoff hopes that this will be another one of those great California wine harvests, and it will tempt more and more customers to visit his virtual vineyard. But just how far both these businesses can go before we all adapt the dollars and cents of hard currency to the new reality of cyberspace commerce is still the major issue of financial life on the internet.
Let's try some more betting.
If you'd like to do some web window shopping or find out about cyberspace spending, you might start here. The eCash homepage explains what eCash is, tells you how to use those new cyber bucks, and keeps you up to date on the latest eCash news. At the CyberCash homepage, you can read what's being said in the media, and of course there's a list of merchants who are willing to accept CyberCash secure payments. Electronic cash is giving the United States Department of the Treasury a whole new challenge. This is their site, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. It was created in 1990 to support law enforcement and regulatory agencies to detect, investigate, and prosecute financial crimes. If you'd like to link up with these sites or learn more about eCash, you can begin by visiting our site. If you have access to the World Wide Web, here's how to find us: http://www.pbs.org. We hope you'll drop by. I'm Scott Simon. Thanks for joining us.
In a network of computers, it's not the MIPS and chips and whatnot that's most important. It's what goes on between the people using them that makes them really powerful. A reminder from Sun Microsystems, proud to support this PBS program.
This is PBS.